All right, what's up guys? In today's video, we're gonna be talking about Vatic Pro's newest releases, the Vatic Pro Vsol Pro, and then the Vatic Pro Vsol Power. These are their brand new full foam core options, and they play very differently. So depending on the style of player that you are, you're definitely gonna wanna pick one over the other. So let's break it down. So the new Vatic Pro Vsols can be bought for $109 before discount, and if you use discount code PBStudio, that will shave the paddles down to $99. And I think that's gonna be one of the biggest reasons these paddles are being talked about. While they still perform amazing, even if they were more expensive, they would be a great price, but at $99, it is a very good price. All right, so let's just get some things out of the way right away. So with the two models, you have a blue one and you have a red one. The red one is the Vsol Power and the blue one is the Vsol Pro. The main difference that you're gonna find is the construction of the inside of the paddle. The Vsol Power has an entire full foam core. There's no ring. It's just a slab of foam, and then they have some indents inside of it instead of true holes like something as a true foam Genesis. And then the Vsol Pro is more in line what we've started to see recently, which is an EPP foam core center and then an EVA ring that surrounds that core to make it a floating core. Think paddles like the Selkirk Boomstick, the Bread and Butter Loco, the Honolulu J2NF, very similar concept to those paddles. All right, first we're gonna start with the Vsol Power. You can see the specs on screen now for the Vatic Pro Vsol Power, and the thing you'll probably notice is that there's really nothing standout. These are probably about as normal of stats as you're gonna get. There might be a couple in there that are on the little bit of the lighter side, but for the most part, pretty standard swing weight, twist weight, nothing too stand out here. I think the biggest demographic of people that the red one is going to be for are people who want a paddle that feels more dampened, more muted, and something that they can really swing through the ball with. As I've been playing with this one, it's not that it's not powerful. I have to imagine that if you put this on a radar gun or some other stuff, I'm sure it's a powerful paddle, but it really feels like I have to work to get the power out of it. Like I have to take much bigger swings than some of the other paddles I've been hitting recently. So I think if you're the type of player who likes to take big strokes, you can generate your own power, then I think you're gonna like this. And also if you're coming from something like a Carbon Genesis, or even with the most recent waves, the feel of this paddle kind of reminds me of those, where it's just, it absorbs a lot of vibration. You're not gonna get a ton of feedback from it. So if you're someone that likes that, then the Vsol Power is definitely gonna give it to you. I would classify this paddle kind of like the Vatic Pro Saga, where it feels like you can drive the ball pretty hard, but pop is not nearly as aggressive. It feels like it's a higher power profile and a lower pop profile. So I think the Vsol Power is gonna be great for people that haven't really liked the direction that some of these other full foam core options have been going. I feel like when they came out, they kind of all started out very muted, very dampened, very dense, and now we kind of shifted towards these very poppy, very stiff, very loud paddles, and the Vsol Power kind of tips back towards when the Genesis launched, and those were the types of full foam core paddles that we were dealing with. Personally, if you already own a Vatic Pro Saga, I haven't gotten to actually compare them side by side yet, but just as I'm hitting it, I don't know that you would find that the power is a giant upgrade. Maybe it does hit harder, and maybe I'm remembering the Saga a little bit wrong, but they kind of have very similar styles, I feel like. I feel like the Saga was a pretty muted paddle, especially the 16 millimeter, not so much the 14 millimeter, and it was also lower pop and higher in power. And to me, that's exactly what the Vsol Power reminds me of. I'm sure there is a little bit difference in the feel, and maybe the pop is slightly more toned up or something like that, but I would say that if you already own a Saga, I probably wouldn't be rushing out to buy the Vsol Power. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the sweet spot. I do think that between the Pro and the Power definitely has the smaller sweet spot. I wouldn't say that it's bad. It's certainly not one of the worst sweet spots I've ever felt, but you will definitely find areas of the paddle that are more dead, or the drop off is a little worse than on the Pro. And so if sweet spot performance is a really big priority for you, you want as big of a sweet spot as you can possibly get, then I probably wouldn't look at the Power as much. Again, not a bad sweet spot, but to me, it didn't really stand out, and I did find myself hitting some balls and then being like, oh, that didn't feel that great. And now I haven't gotten to add weight onto the Power yet. However, when you compare it to the Pro, I just have a feeling it's not gonna make as big of a difference as it will on the Pro. On the Pro, weight makes a pretty big difference, which we'll get to in just a minute here. And I just get the sense that on the Power, it's not going to as much. But I haven't actually gotten to test that yet, so we'll have to wait and see. All right, now let's talk about the Vsol Pro, because this is the one that kind of stood out to me more and was a little bit more exciting. If you want the specs, those will be on screen now. The first thing you're gonna notice is that across the board, the swing weights are lower than on the Power. So if you're someone that's looking for basically as low of swing weights as you can get, then you're gonna find that more in the Pro than you are in the Power. However, these are higher swing weights than the Quantas, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because one of the things I noticed with the Pro, which is built in a pretty similar way to the Quanta, is that out of the box, they just play better. If you've heard a lot of people talk about the Quanta, you have heard everyone say it needs weight, out of the box, it's really not that great, it's really not that special. I find that with the Vsol Pro, more people would be able to play these out of the box than the Quanta. While I do still think they benefit a lot from weight, if I had to make a recommendation for someone and they said, I don't want to put weight on this, I would absolutely push them towards a Vsol Pro over the Quanta. So overall, I think the Vsol Pro is gonna be in a pretty similar realm as the Quanta. They're both stiffer paddles, they have higher pop, they have good power, but once you put weight on them, they really start to unlock. So I tried two different setups. I tried 10 grams on the Bloom, which is the wide body, and I just put that directly at 3 and 9. That gave the paddle a pretty great bump. And then I also did 15 grams on a Flash long handle, which is a hybrid / elongated. It's kind of in a weird spot there. And then the power just goes up significantly. One thing I feel like I've noticed as I've been playing with the Bloom, because I've put a lot of time on the R2 Quanta, which is also the wide body, it feels like weight makes a slightly bigger difference on the Quanta, or if you're really looking for max pop, max power, you're gonna get that more from the Quanta than you are the Vsol Pro. It still hits hard, but I did find that on the Quanta, I feel like I didn't have to put as much in to get as much out. And on the Vsol Pro, I found that I was having to swing just a little bit more to get it out. However, I was using 10 grams on the Bloom wide body and I had 15 grams on the Quanta, so it could all just come down to weight in that scenario. I also think if we're comparing it to a Quanta, the Vsol Pro just feels a little bit more dense, whereas the Quanta just feels kind of stiff and hollow. So I think the feel out of the box is probably a little bit better on the Vsol Pro as well. So I think overall what I have found in my early impressions is that Vsol Pro out of the box, a lot more playable, probably easier for more people to use. And then the Quanta feels like it has a higher overall ceiling, but out of the box it's not very good. So it kind of comes down to whether or not you're going to customize the paddle a lot or you want it to play really well out of the box, which honestly I'm kind of glad it's that way, because I feel like it gives people a little bit more option between the Quanta and the Vsol Pro. I almost expected these paddles to play completely identical, and then it was going to be like, well, just pick whichever brand you resonate with more, I guess. But so far in the early impressions, it does feel like there's more difference than I was expecting. And overall, I just found the Pro to be more poppy, more powerful than the Power, and I personally enjoyed that. I feel like recently with trying to compact some of my strokes, having to take bigger swings on the Power or be less compact just didn't feel as good to me. But again, if you're someone that likes those big loopy strokes or you really want to swing through the ball, then I think the Power would be better suited for you. So overall, first impressions are positive. I would say both of the paddles have a place in the market, and for those of you looking for an amazing budget option, these are going to be great. How do they stack up against paddles like a Loco or a Boomstick? Personally, as of my testing so far, I would still rather take a Boomstick, or I would still rather take a bread and butter Loco. I kind of like the feel of those paddles more and the extra power that I'm getting from them. But again, for $99 and a pack of weight to make these hit pretty hard, you are able to get a lot of the performance aspects, maybe not so much the feel of the paddle, but the actual pop and power performance. I think you can get there, but personally for me, I would still rather take those paddles. But again, they're a lot more money. So anyways, as we test these paddles more, we'll keep you guys updated, but first impressions are definitely solid. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.